hear you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was trying to connect my Bluetooth headset and
Okay.
glitching out.
All right.
Perfect.
So we're gonna do an homage to Quentin Tarantino because the last time I was, or I don't know if it was last time, but one time I was on, did the same thing, and I think it worked out very well. So it was gonna be experimental. So like Quentin's movies, we're gonna jump in the middle of the story and then work our way back, and then by the end you'll have the entire story out of time order. So Jessica, you have a 5-year-old son. How long has it been since you've seen your son? Did we lose her? Karen.
Yeah, it looks like she got disconnected. Let me call her right back in.
All right. So since I know the answer, I think it's over 120 days that she hasn't seen her son. I think it's since sometime in January. So Jessica, can you hear?
Yeah, sorry, it booted me out for a second. I had to rejoin the call. I apologize.
All right.
No,
So
don't worry. That happens sometimes with Skype, so this wouldn't be the first time. Yeah.
okay. So when was the last time you saw your?
Difficulties.
When was the last time you saw your son?
The last time I saw my son in person on my full parenting time was December 6th, 2019.
2019. That's not by choice, right? That's by a court order. The court is forcing you to not see your son, right?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
it's by a temporary order.
Okay. So in and the son you have, you never married the father. So the case we're discussing is strictly custody because you were never actually married, right?
Correct. Yes, there was no divorce involved.
Okay, so in October, I think of 2018, your son was with his father, and there was an incident involving drugs. So first describe the incident, and then the machinations, if you will, of what happened legally as a result, and what, if any, steps you took to try to change custody as a result.
Sure. So just for the record, it would be July 2018.
Okay.
And July 10th, 2018, my son's father was charged with child neglect and child endangerment. Long story short, he was found passed out unconscious by a dumpster outside of his apartment complex. He was overdosing on non-prescribed medications. He was under the influence of alcohol, and we specifically had a no use clause. So it was a pretty big event, pretty traumatic. After that happened, I obviously motioned for full custody, in which it took a while to get through that process because I had to wait for my son's father to actually be convicted and or have the crime be dismissed before I could successfully obtain full custody. And that went until February 2019. And then he was convicted and he pled guilty February 2019 to both charges.
Okay, and then what did you do as far as custody after that happened?
So once that happened, I motioned our usual family judge, Judge Michael J. Mayer from Dakota County First Judicial District in Minnesota. And I asked for a court date, and I eventually got one scheduled for June 2019. I had an attorney at the time, actually, a private attorney there, and I motioned to obviously modify our custody arrangement and visitation, parenting time, that sort of thing. Um, because of the nature of the event, I mean, when your 4-year-old goes missing, there's only so many options you have to protect them, you know? So I went to court, and Judge Mayer ended up ruling that my motion to modify custody following my ex's conviction of child neglect and child endangerment was retaliation. And he denied my motion. He ordered me to pay my ex $1,000 in 10 days for frivolous litigation, basically.
Okay, and this is the same ex who is now keeping you away from your son.
Correct. Yes, it's been
All right.
ongoing for about 5 years.
Okay, right, and in those 5 years, would you say the court litigation is once in a while, average, or are you in court a lot?
Oh, no, we're in court quite often. I believe the year of 2017, I checked into Dakota County Courthouse 27 times in 1 year.
Okay. Michael Mayer was involved in the Rucky case, so this is the same judge who said your litigation after your father was passed out after ODing on drugs, that was just retaliation. He was involved in the Rucky case as well. The two oldest daughters, Samantha and Gianna, ran on April 19, 2013. They were found in November of 2015. The reason they ran was because they were going to be forced to live with their father. Their father who stuck a gun to their older brother's head, who made comments about Samantha's breast, who has police reports in 3 counties, is just a vicious, violent monster. So during this hearing, here are some of the things that Judge Michael Mayer heard. The girls feel it is in their best interest for Dakota County to stay involved in this case, to remain in local foster care. This is probably the only time in history that children ask to remain in foster care. Here's another quote. The agency's primary concern is the safety and well-being of the concerned, that there is a flight risk or a run risk. This is another person who testified. And then this is what Mayer said. But the bottom line is, I'm concerned for the kids. I'm very concerned about them running. So these are girls who wanted to stay in foster care, who said in no uncertain terms that they would run if they were placed back with their father. And Mayer did go ahead and place them back with their father, the man who stuck a gun to their older brother's head. All right, so now let's forward to August of last year, Jessica. Before you get to August of last year, prior to what we're about to describe, were you like generally a criminal or a law-abiding citizen?
Well, on paper, obviously law-abiding citizen. I had no prior convictions. I've never had encounters with the police, never any negative interactions. I'm currently a dual major at Hamline University in St. Paul in Minnesota. I'm on a full ride academic scholarship. I've made the Dean's List twice in a row, National Honor Society student. I've never really had any issues, and that's why it's been so troubling, because it's so blatantly abusive. It makes no sense to anybody, and people are really getting concerned. And the more concern that I've been getting, the more retaliation I've been experiencing as I expose my findings along the way, which is how we get to August 2019.
Okay, so approximately how many times have you been arrested by law enforcement since August of 2019?
I wish it was approximate, but the definite count as of right now is 7 times. I have been unlawfully detained 7 times since August 2019, majority of which were facilitated in front of the minor child.
Okay, so describe the first incident and go from there. And then don't describe what happened with custody. We'll get to that after you describe all of the criminal, if you will, incidents.
Sure. So August 13th was the first arrest. I was arrested for an alleged 5th-degree assault reported by my son's father, basically stating that I broke into a secured apartment complex in broad daylight on a Tuesday and I bit him on the arm. So I was arrested.
Was there proof of this alleged bite?
Oh, no, actually, I'm glad you asked that. The police report that I have specifically states, quote unquote, from the officer, that there seems to be a dime-sized red dot with no teeth marks, verbatim. So there was actually no finding to even support a complaint.
Yeah, that's not what a bite mark looks like. I did Children's Medical Center trauma ER for 10 years. Yeah. Dime-sized red mark is not a bite.
Well, and when it specifically says there is no tooth marks, like you would think that an officer would just realize what it is, a civil matter between 2 parents who are battling a really nasty custody battle, have been. And it went all downhill from there. That actually followed my appeal. I appealed Judge Mayer's decision from June And basically, the day that appeal went through is when this whole kind of whirlwind began, if you will. So I was detained August 13th. My ex then went and filed for a harassment restraining order, and it was granted temporarily August 15th. On that order, it stated that I had a court hearing August 29th. Perfect, no problem. We've been down this road before. I know how this goes. I hadn't even received the complaint. I didn't even really know what charges were being brought against me. I walk into court August 29th for my hearing, and it is presided over by Judge Carter, Joseph T. Carter, same judicial district, who's also, I believe, been involved in the Rucky case. I know he's been involved in a few other cases with some of the other victims I've been working with too. And I walked in and I told him, I haven't even seen the complaint. I don't even know what I'm defending myself against. Like, what did I allegedly do? And he denied my motion for continuance, denied my oral motion to be able to obtain legal counsel. I'm looking for an evidentiary hearing, and it was completely ignored. He said on the record that he found reason to believe that I broke into a secure building and hit my ex from that complaint.
Okay.
Comes in place. Now,
Right,
the
so-
problem
Go ahead. Keep going.
with the order is that it restricts me from being within 1 mile of my ex's home. The original temporary order issued on August 15th restricted me from being within 4 blocks. Now, typically, that wouldn't make much of a difference except for the fact that my son's father unilaterally enrolled our son in school without my knowledge, and the school just so happens to be within that 1 mile.
Oh my God.
So now you can't pick up your son.
So now I am barred from going to my son's school, being a part of any of his events, and he's in kindergarten this year. And you would think
Oh my
that
God.
more supportive, but they weren't. It's been a really bad year. It's been a really bad experience, unfortunately, and it's really traumatized Colton. I've been arrested at his school 3 times.
Oh my God.
You're one of the police officers involved is a Lakeville detective. Her name is Kelly Coughlin. Can you describe some of her involvement?
Well, I unfortunately a little too late found out that Detective Kelly Coughlin, a couple fun facts. 1, she is a sex crime detective. 2, she was assigned to our case August 22nd, which was before my restraining order hearing. Now, she testified on a court record in my family hearing that she was assigned to investigate restraining order violations. On the record, I asked her, because I'm a pro se, I do represent myself, so I get the right to cross-examination. I asked her why she was investigating. When she was assigned, she said August 22nd, 2019, I was investigating restraining order violations. I made it very clear multiple times that the first alleged restraining order violation did not take place until September 2nd, which led to me being arrested at my son's school on his first day of school for an email asking about his school information.
Okay. And that's the only time she's been involved in your case?
That's how she got started. So I don't know who assigned her. I still cannot give a truthful answer, even under the penalty of perjury.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, she has had every hand in every single possible cookie jar along the way. My ex reported to her.
So Kelly Coughlin was also involved in the Rucky case. In fact, there is a 1-hour police interview between her and Samantha Rucky, that is one of the 2 daughters who ran. And the entire time, number one, the entire time she rarely, if ever, asks about the abuse that led to Samantha running. She tries to implicate her mother as much as possible. And she has her gun sticking out of her pants because obviously the 18-year-old is a big threat. Also, I'm going to read a police report involving David Rucky, and she was assigned to investigate this particular police report. On 8/21/08 at approximately 0900 hours, I responded to the Lakeville Police Department lobby to speak with Christopher Gary By. Chris said his family is currently in a legal battle with other members of their family over a trust fund left by his wife's grandmother. Chris said the grandmother died last night after a long battle with cancer. Chris said, per his wife's grandmother's wishes, a lawyer was present when the family was at her home after her death. Chris said the lawyer was there to keep the peace because the grandmother knew the family was hostile to each other. Chris said he dropped his son off at Hockey Development Center this morning. Chris said David Victor Rucky, who was born in 1963, was waiting for him and confronted him the second he got out of the vehicle with his son. Chris said David is his wife's uncle and is one of the family members that are suing for more money. Chris said David has a son that attends hockey camp. That would be Nico. That would be the son he stuck a gun to his head and had already dropped him off. Chris said David confronted him by swearing and yelling profanities at him. Chris said David made reference to having a lawyer present after the death and called him a piece of shit. That's really nice. And you should feel really good about yourself stealing money. Chris said he yelled back at David and told his son to go inside. While Chris was talking to me, he was visibly upset and was emotional. Chris said after his son went inside, David approached him, was nose to nose with him in the parking lot. Chris said David yelled at him, "I'm coming after you and you won't even see me coming." Chris said David also said it probably won't be me that will get you. Chris said he turned to leave and David got in his car and yelled, "Let's go, let's go." So this particular incident, David was initially charged with, I believe, like reckless conduct. That was dismissed. Chris got a restraining order, which was dismissed about a month or two after he got it by a judge named David Knutson, who was also the judge on the divorce. That's the same judge who gave David sole custody and 100% of the legal matters. And this was investigated by Kelly Coughlin. So,
Mike, I just want to piggyback off that because I was going to mention that there was actually 2 hearings on this restraining order, and David Knutson was supposed to be my judge. And on Mincis, on my case registration, it says David Knutson actually decided the restraining order 2 days before, on August 27th. I was not notified of that hearing. They had a whole separate hearing without me.
Right. Let me, when Sandra Grazzini Rucky was first arrested for her involvement in having the kids be hidden, she was taken for, she was supposed to have a bail. It was supposed to be, I think, at 10 a.m. They pulled her out of line, threw her into a separate court at 9 a.m. so her lawyer wouldn't be there. And a judge named Erica McDonald, who is now the U.S. attorney in either one of the districts or Minnesota, they might only have one district. So she's a U.S. attorney, a very powerful lawyer now, read off a note written by David Knutson, said, David Knutson is giving you $1 million cash bond, and I am not to hear anything else. So David Knutson sounds like this is what he does. He issues orders and then has other people work his dirty work. So continue with the law enforcement stuff. Is there anything else that we should know?
Oh, yeah, we haven't even gotten to the good stuff. I'll just kind of pinpoint the next following 6 arrests. So let's see what we got to August 13th. Okay, so we go through the restraining order, and instantly I knew something was wrong. Lakeville PD was not giving me the police report. They were telling me it was unavailable, that kind of thing. So I knew something was up right from the jump. And so I started filing motions, motion to vacate, motion to dismiss, motion for a rehearing, literally any motion I could Google and come up with, even if it was from different states. I was trying to apply it here, anything that I could find. And the court clerks were telling me, oh no, you can't file anything within the first 30 days of a restraining order being issued. And I argued that with them. And I said, well, I'm looking at the judge's very specific order that says I have 20 days. I must file an amendment or a motion to vacate within the first 20 days. So basically, not only do they have a separate hearing, but the court clerks are now in on it. The court clerks are lying to me. I've had multiple recordings of them screaming at me, hanging up on me. So we get to September, my son's first day of kindergarten. supposed to be a fantastic day in every parent's life, I guess, that monumental moment. And it was the worst day. It was very traumatizing. I took my son to Eden Prairie where I had enrolled him, and because I couldn't go to my son's school in Lakeville. And my ex was demanding that I bring him to JFK in writing. He was demanding that I bring him to a very specific location at the school at a specific time. And I kept telling him, I can't, like, your restraining order, like, you have to fix it. And he basically gave me no option. It was either back me into a corner and violate by going to our son's school, or not go, and now I'm neglecting our child's educational needs. So I was arrested on the first day of school, September 3rd.
Wait, can I cut you off? I want to make sure I understood this correctly. You were arrested because your ex insisted that you do something that would make you violate the terms of the order. Am I correct?
Yep.
Okay, go on.
So when I finally got the discovery for that, I look at the police report, and September 2nd, my ex filed a restraining order violation because I emailed his mother, his attorney, and him asking very basic questions like, hey, what classroom is my son in? Where is it located? Where's the front door? Those kind of things that every parent should know on the first day of school.
Mm-hmm.
And he reported that as a violation directly to Detective Kelly Coughlin. And yeah, they arrested me for it, even though they requested for it to be dismissed the day prior to.
Okay.
So basically, what they've been doing is kind of charging me and then holding me and then releasing and dismissing the charges when I get out.
Describe how physically Kelly Coughlin has treated you. She treated you with respect physically, or more like woman handled you?
Oh, she has violated my life physically, mentally, emotionally. Everything from unlawful investigations, unlawful surveillance outside of my apartment, which is not even in her jurisdiction. I have been followed to my friends' homes. My friends have been followed. She's physically assaulted me, like police brutality. I'm like 125 pounds. I've never been aggressive toward law enforcement. I'm not much of a fight against them. I'm not senile over here.
Does she ever throw you onto the ground?
She did in front of my minor child. September 25th, when I was arrested, they followed my husband from my son's school all the way to St. Louis Park, and then followed him to me. And they ripped me out of the vehicle. And Kelly Coughlin was ripping me by one side out of the passenger by my neck, and then the other sex crime detective, Sean Fitzhenry, who arrested me, I think 5 out of the 7 times. He was pulling me physically out of one side. I had bruising all over my body. He grabbed me and basically like crushed into my diaphragm so hard that I could not function and slammed me into the ground. And when I was already down, detained on the ground, on my belly, Detective Kelly Coughlin came up behind him and kneed me in the back of my neck, and like where my neck and my spine connect. And it caused my cheekbone to then instantly impact on the ground. So my cheekbone was swollen. I had physical bruising all over me, my neck. And I took pictures of all of that, and there was witnesses. My husband actually showed up to pick up my son, and they said, no, CPS ordered that the child be returned back to his father.
CPS ordered it?
Yeah, and I kept saying, what are you talking about, CPS? I've never, ever had an encounter. My son's father has had 3 investigations with CPS. Never talked to them a day in my life. Not for me, for him. And
incidentally, CPS is who Nico Rucky reported to that his father stuck a gun to his head, but they never intervened.
Oh, yeah, I reported so many things. When my ex was threatening suicide and my son was in the house and he tried to hang himself with a noose and then left it there with the chair under it for our 4-year-old to play around.
Okay.
I've been reporting for years. So that
Right. I
was
also, let me jump in really quickly. I also want to point out a guy named Dwight Mitchell led a class action lawsuit against CPS in Minnesota. So your story is one of numerous that parents have found throughout the state of Minnesota against CPS. Keep going.
I'm actually working with Dwight Mitchell, and he actually just started a nonprofit for helping other litigants navigate this really intense process. So let's see. Following that, it's really hard to say what I was arrested for because there's so many different proofs online. The next couple times following that, it was pending investigation. And then I would get there and they would say, oh, haha, here's a magical restraining order violation. Now you have to sit for 36 hours.
Okay.
So let's see, September 25th, that's when Detective Kelly Coughlin had been the most physical and damaging to me, per se. And that day, the only reason I was arrested, from what I was told, was that allegedly I failed to appear in court for the 5th degree assault. However, I had actually motioned for a continuance for that. So I could, one, obtain the police report that I still had not gotten yet, that Lakeville PD was still unlawfully withholding from me. And it just so happened to be the day before I got my new family judge after forcefully recusing Judge May.
And who is your new family court judge?
New family court judge is Honorable Ann Offerman. I believe she was out of the 2nd Judicial District, out of Ramsey, and they ended up bringing her in to Dakota Home instead of just changing the venue, which should have been recommended to me. But
I wanna read something that this judge recently wrote, because this will tell you the kind of bias that Judge Ann Offerman has. On February 20 and 21, 2020, respondent Jessica Hartger sent various emails to court's law clerk, opposing counsel, and chief judge of the 1st Judicial District and others. Some of these emails include oblique threats toward the court. After consultation with the chief judge, I reported these threats to law enforcement and had the emails sent to law enforcement. These reports led to law enforcement listing the court as a victim in law enforcement records. Subsequently, law enforcement informed the court that Ms. Hartger was posting about the court on social media. Law enforcement advised the court that Ms. Hartger's location was unknown and that she was subject to a bench warrant in a felony criminal matter. The court viewed Ms. Hartger's public social media to determine if she's making any further threats toward the court or its staff. The court deemed this to be an emergency and reasonably believed that no party would gain procedurally, substantively, or tactical advantage as a result. All right. Any information learned from social media posts attributed will not be used to render a decision in this matter. Do you believe that? On April 6, 2020, law enforcement informed the court that Ms. Hartger was again subject to a bench warrant, which means right now you're actually a fugitive, technically. Am I right?
Allegedly.
Yeah. So I want to point out what she's saying. What she's saying is, even though I reported this woman to the police, and I believe I'm threatened by her, that will not bias me at all when I make a decision in her custody case. In the same vein, Judge David Knutson was sued for 9 figures, that's over $100 million, and told the lawyer who sued him, as a result of the things he did to Sandra Gazzini-Rucki, that I'm not removing myself from this case. I can be unbiased even though you're suing me. And the day after he said that, that was September 11th that he said it, on September 12th, he forced that same lawyer to conduct part of custody trial handcuffed to a wheelchair. So you see what's happening with these judges take extraordinary measures to screw with you and then say, we're not biased. All right. So
what I was going to say to you too is that the judge that issued my arrest warrant September 25th for failing to appear, that judge denied my motion that morning, and instead of e-filing and e-serving to me as usual, because I'm a pro se, she mailed it. I found out later that judge just so happened to be my family judge.
And
so
Offerman.
there should be conflict of interest right there. My family
Right.
have been
Right.
able to on my criminal matters.
All right, so let's get to the custody part. I want to read. This is an ex parte order. So ex parte means you were not there. So this was in December of 2019. You know what I'm talking about, right, Jessica? I'm gonna I'm gonna read it a little bit, and then you describe what happened and what the result. The court finds that it is in the joint minor child's best interest for petitioner to be awarded sole custody, that's her ex, and sole physical custody on a temporary basis until a hearing can be held on petitioner's motions. There are allegations that respondent has violated conditions of release in a criminal matter by leaving the state of Minnesota. There are allegations that respondent left the state of Minnesota with the joint minor child and contemplated leaving the minor child in Michigan. Additionally, there are allegations that the respondent has made statements regarding taking the minor child to the country of Canada. There are allegations that respondent is using non-prescribed drugs and may have an untreated mental illness. If these by the way, so I want to point, before you go on, I want to point this out. She did an ex parte order, which means you didn't have a right to defend yourself based on a series of allegations that you would take your minor child to the country of Canada. There are two interesting cases from the state of Minnesota. One is Caroline Rice, who did take her minor child to the country of Canada. Another one, Kim Sperling, who took her minor child to the country of Canada. They are from another county to protect those minor children from abusive parents. If you don't believe me, read the daughter, Ann Lise Rice, describes her father, Brent Rice. By the way, I talked to Brent Rice. He was being sued by his daughter, and I said, so how's your relationship with your daughter? He's like, great. I'm like, really? She's suing you for $100 million, but it's great? He's like, yeah, no, it's great. And Brent Rice threw his daughter into a refrigerator and all kinds of other things. So it's almost like they're taking from the playbook.
I think that's why they're coming so hard on me about it, is because they know that I very well could have successfully taken my minor child to Canada and gotten protection.
Right. And incidentally, Kim Sperling was able to receive refugee status from the United States of America in Canada based on what the family court was doing to her. Okay, so what led up to you remember the date of the order? What led up to this, and what are the consequences of this order, and describe what was happening here?
So, November, the end of November, Thanksgiving weekend, it had probably been about my 5th arrest by that point. I lose count after a while. And I finally had just had enough. I knew I was being unlawfully detained. I knew something was fishy. I could feel it in my gut, and I knew we weren't safe. I didn't feel safe anymore. And so I petitioned my home state of Michigan for emergency jurisdiction because we fled home to Michigan fleeing domestic violence from my ex and his father in 2015. So I petitioned my home state for emergency jurisdiction to save us because there isn't anything in place for judicial whistleblowers, and they were going to destroy me. And between the collusion amongst my ex, Lakeville PD, Kelly Coughlin, Minnesota BCA, they were able to somehow track down and do wellness checks in Michigan. My ex was claiming that he was so afraid that he hadn't heard from me that his minor child might be dead. He failed to mention there's a restraining order that keeps me from being able to contact him. But so going forward, that's what he used in December. And so December 6th is when Lakeville PD posed as Amazon delivery, and they forcefully entered my home, and they detained me in front of my minor child again. They kept me in cuffs. They brought us both to a facility. They let my minor child sit on my lap while I was in handcuffs, and basically they gave me that look like, you should just say goodbye. You're never going to see him again. And I felt it. I felt that. And I was released. I believe that one, I think Diana Edwards, Honorable Diana Edwards might have heard that one, or Judge Abrams. And both of them have been very reasonable with me this whole time. And following that, it looks between the documentation that my ex kept my son out of school for multiple days leading up to the petition of this temporary order because he was waiting on a decision. So it sounds like there was some ex parte communications going on before the ex parte order even took place. So that was December 11th. And then the 13th, one thing you'll notice is there's a pattern. Every time I'm arrested, he waits to see if I get out to file a restraining order. Not to mention the two that he's voluntarily dropped on his own throughout the family file, but that's for another day. So December 13th comes. That's the day of our evidentiary hearing. And I walk in. I hadn't received any discovery from his attorney. She refuses to remain ethically and practice law the way it should be practiced. It's really difficult for me.
May I ask a question at that? Since you mentioned about ethical practice, we have a question from our online chat room about whether an American can apply for asylum claiming an abusive judicial system.
Yes.
And to go into Canada, they can. Okay.
Correct. That's exactly what Kim Sperling did. In fact, look up a woman named Joanne McDowell out of North Carolina, and those cases are similar to this case and similar to the Rucky case. And I bet it's not a coincidence that they mentioned the country of Canada in that ex parte order.
Well, and now I'm kind of kicking myself because I wasn't thinking Canada. That's why I chose Michigan. But now I wish I did think Canada. The problem was that they had no supporting evidence. They were giving affidavits from family members that have never even met my son, from family members I haven't talked to in over a decade. And, totally inadmissible. Like a reasonable person would be like, yeah, they don't have personal knowledge of your day-to-day life. They coerced my parents into it. It was a pretty big deal. It's ripped apart my family. And I went in and just said, hey, there's nothing here that supports any of these allegations. I've never had an alcohol problem. However, he's on probation for a 3rd-degree DWI. I've never had CPS involved. I have never had an assault charge. I have no criminal record. Like, I don't have any mental health issues. I actually have taken on my own mental health for my own sake and not forced by the court, which I thought was a really bold move to do. And it's hard because in this family court, you are damned if you do and damned if you don't. If you take your meds, you're crazy. If you don't take them, you need them. And either way, it's going to get used against you. Like Mike said, there was talk about that line got me about my prescribed medications because it actually says in the order that there's allegations that I am taking my prescribed medication, which naturally I would think like, okay, bravo, good for me. Yay. I'm caring. Okay, good mom. Nice. Like doing that for your kid or whatever, I didn't see how that was used against me. But the only thing that they had regarding Canada was a text message that I had sent to my mother. And my mother was my best friend. I was raised by a single mom, so it was just me and her for a big portion of my life. And I had sent her a text message while I was traveling. And that's when I had discovered Canada. And I was like, oh, I could do this. And that's where the confusion and the conflicting statements of, well, 1 minute I was going to just abandon my son in the state of Michigan while simultaneously taking him to Canada. So it's like they were arguing two things. They were arguing that I was going to abandon him and that I was going to kidnap him. Yeah. And it was really hard to fight that because I'm like, what angle do you guys want to go with? Like, nothing was supported, and that's what kept scaring me. And I argued it. I asked for a motion to vacate. I did like a 9-page motion for objections on the record. Like, I just ripped this file apart, and they still blatantly just don't care. I was actually denied an evidentiary hearing 3 different times. And then my judge said, oh, petitioner. The petitioner is entitled to a evidentiary hearing off the same claims he has been making for 5 years, all of which were never supported. And that was when Judge Offerman ordered that I only get 4 hours a week with my son at a supervised center. I had to pay half. My ex could choose to cancel the visits at any point in time. No phone calls, because apparently the main idea is that I am a flight risk and that I am somehow just going to up and kidnap my kid, even though I've appeared at every single court hearing I have ever had since I was 17 years old. I've never failed to appear. I have never violated. Like any charges I had were on a state adjudication. Like I'm not a habitual criminal.
This thing's been going on since 2015. Prior to August 2019, how many times had you kidnapped your son and kept him away from his father?
Never. I actually was very adamant about facilitating a relationship between my son and my parents, my son and my ex, my son and my ex's parents. My ex was known for withholding the child if he was mad at that person. So my ex and my parents actually did not have a relationship at all. He would withhold Colton all the time. He withheld our child from his own parents. It's just a game he played because he knows that's the way to people's hearts, is using the child as a pawn. And so this has been ongoing, nonstop, since we were forced to move back to Minnesota.
All right. So in other words, this idea that you're ready to kidnap your son is not actually supported by the facts of the case for the first 5 years or 4 years or so.
Right.
Because you've never actually done it. You've never actually done it.
So, with the whole kidnapping thing is because he's been claiming that. He's been claiming I kidnapped our son in 2015.
Okay. Right. Okay. So anything else you want to add?
Yeah. So following that, we did have the evidentiary hearing, like I kind of mentioned in the beginning, and that was in January. And that is the transcript that is now price tagged at $2,200, which is about $5 a page.
You've gotten other transcripts from the court, am I correct?
Yeah, and they were like $150.
So this one is significantly more expensive.
Why?
You have a GoFundMe. Do you want to tell the GoFundMe to try to raise money for this transcript?
I would love to. Yeah, it should actually just be court transcript. I think it's like court transcript reveals is what it's titled. I can send the link out.
I'm sorry, but is this more expensive than the other transcripts because it's longer, or because they put a higher price on per page?
It is more pages. However, it's exponentially higher per page than all of the other transcripts.
Well, and the other
why would they change the difference? I mean,
well, Jessica, we can't answer that question, but why do you think this one is more expensive than the other transcripts?
I know why. I have it via email because she told me it's a 400-page transcript covering 3 days worth of trial, except I was only notified of 1 day of trial. So they were having 2 other days of trial and just not telling anybody.
Okay, so they basically gave you a bullshit excuse as to why it is so expensive. This is the first time I have ever heard of any hospital record, CPS record, or court transcription it's almost like it's price gouging.
Right.
And I'm still waiting on my son's dental records from December when my ex decided to have our son undergo an elective procedure orchestrated by a dentist who's already been sanctioned for medical abuse, and he was put under local anesthesia for 3 hours.
Okay, Jessica, we've got about 10 minutes left. What else, if anything, do you want to add? And then if you can find the GoFundMe, that would be helpful as well.
I mean, at this point, obviously we've discussed that I currently have a warrant because of my family judge. I don't really know what to do in this instant. So if there's anybody listening that has insight or has questions or any type of advice, And how I can navigate through this, I've tried every legal remedy, and I'm at a loss. But it's been 135 days now since I have seen or talked to my son. And if I call next, I'm going to go to jail.
Right.
So I don't know.
So I want to point out something. So
I'm
your
afraid they're going to say I abandoned my son.
all right. So your ex said when you tried to get sole custody, that was retaliation, and now you haven't seen your son in 135 days. David Rucky claimed that Sandra Grazzini Rucky was alienating him from his kids, so he wasn't able to see his kids. She hasn't seen her kids since 2013. Find that to be a remarkable set of circumstances. You found out about the Rucky case. Do you think your case is an anomaly, or have you found other cases in the state of Minnesota in this particular judicial district that are similar?
Over the past couple months, I have found over a handful at this point. We're reaching up to about probably 7 or 8 victims that have reached out to me just within the state of Minnesota, probably about 5 within the same judicial district. And a lot of us have the same common denominators. Our attorneys, work together, or the same judges, the same police officers, the same procedural history. We all have a few differences, but even just our identities. I've noticed a lot of the victims all had the same kind of career paths. Some of us kind of looked the same even. It's really interesting when you take a step back and you really look at the sociology behind this, and you start to examine the typology that's going on here. And it makes you wonder, are we dealing with a county that just has mommy issues? Like, does everybody in Dakota County law enforcement and the judicial system just have really bad, grudges against moms? I don't know. But what I do know is that it's blatantly happening, and that doesn't happen for no reason.
Right. I want to point Kim Sperling. That's a case from several years ago. It's one of the first cases of this kind. She's also from Lakeville, and she had Detective Kelly Coughlin on a few of her cases, including one where her ex made a terroristic threat. So her ex made a terroristic threat, and he's the one with sole custody. Your ex
kill me for sure.
Right. Your ex got OD'd and left his son alone, and he has sole custody. David Rucky sticks a gun to his son's head, and he has sole custody. Karen, this is just a mind-boggling coincidence. Am I right? There's nothing to see here. Am I right? Let Karen finish. Go ahead.
I just the similarities to the Rucky case is just, it's uncanny. It really is.
In fact, you discovered the Rucky case because you found a lot of similarities. Is that right, Jessica?
I actually, no, actually, I found the Rucky case when I was trying to remove Judge Mayer. And I just started Googling anything I could, Dakota County, just any dirt I could find to meet the legal standard of a reasonable person believing there could be prejudice or bias for recusal. There's a federal code that makes it super easy, but he obviously denied to do it. And the day I was arrested was the day it was announced that Ann Offerman was my new judge, and that I got Judge Mayer to recuse himself.
Right. Judge Michael Mayer is the judge who heard that girls would rather stay with foster parents than their father, would run if placed with their father, and still place them with their father. That's the same Michael Mayer you're talking about in the Rucky case. That's what he did in the Rucky case. And in your case, he said, just because your ex got wasted on drugs and left your son alone while he was passed out, that shouldn't mean you should switch custody. And if you do, you're obviously just retaliating. And then the same person who was
used it against me when my ex was in treatment, I facilitated phone calls between my son and my ex, and Judge Mayer used that against me. How dare I facilitate a relationship after he endangers our son? It's damned if I do and damned if I don't. Because if I didn't do it, I tried to be the good co-parent.
Right. Incidentally, that brings me to another anecdote from the Rucky case. One of the guardian ad litem, Julie Friedrich, once told Sandra Grazzini Rucky that if you keep saying that you've been abused by your ex and your kids have been abused by their ex, I will say that you weren't protecting your kids.
What I love is that David Knutson actually signed my restraining order against my ex in 2017.
Okay.
So
And how else has he
David,
been involved in your case? David Knutson was the divorce judge and the judge who dismissed that restraining order after David Rucky said, "I'm coming after you and you won't even see me coming." And incidentally, he said something very similar to Sandra Grazzini Rucky's lawyer when he threatened her. "I'm coming after you and you won't even see me coming." That's a statement that he likes to say. So how else has David Knutson been involved?
he's actually, when I look through my case file, he's been involved since day one. In 2017, I petitioned for a order for protection, protecting my son and myself from my ex, and David Knutson actually signed that. He also signed, and or his name is in the case registry for the now current restraining order that was based off of this alleged fifth-degree assault that never happened.
Okay.
So it's kind of like both sides in my phone.
Right. So the presence of Michael Mayer, David Knutson, and Kelly Coughlin, Karen, these are just total coincidence, random chances that all of these people wind up on all of these cases, right?
I don't think so.
Let Karen finish.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way. There's definitely a pattern, and as far as I can tell, Dakota County and their network is basically disarming parents from being able to take loving protective action of their children, and that is promotions. And you're listening to Revolution Radio. We'll be back in 5 minutes after the break. Thank you so much for coming on today. We have to go.
All right. Thank you for having us.